So, hi, good morning. As Rita said, I am Anaily Valderrama. Oh, yes, questions. Thank you. I'm the Business Development Manager for Anthony Nolan Cell and Gene Therapy Services, or CGT for short. I'm delighted to be here with you this morning to tell you about what we do in CGT, give you a bit of an introduction to the world of cell and gene therapies, what they are, how Anthony Nolan is involved, and what it means for our patients. Like Rita said, and Alice as well, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat. Just a small caveat, I'm not a scientist, so depending on the nature of your question, I might need to come back to you after the presentation. But of course, I'll do my best to answer. So please don't be shy and just, keep your questions coming. So next slide. Here we go. I know that you are all super familiar with the work of Anthony Nolan due to your amazing volunteering work. But I still thought that it would be helpful to talk you through a bit of our history and evolution, because I think that it goes a very long way to explain how we ended up getting involved in something like cell and gene therapies. Anthony Nolan is an organization that has continuously innovated to support patients. Starting with Shirley Nolan in 1974, who, as you know, set up the first stem cell register in the world in the hopes of finding a suitable match for her son, Anthony, who had a rare genetic immunodeficiency called Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome. Soon after setting up the register, we realized that it wasn't enough to have a list of potential donors. A lot of work was needed to match them to patients in need. That is why we set up our histocompatibility and immunogenetics labs. That is what HNI stands for, if you ever wondered, to support that matching. As we learned more about the complexities of matching, we realized that we needed to know more about what makes a good match, how we can find them, and what are the key markers that will help us improve patient outcomes. That is why in 1995, we opened the Anthony Nolan Research Institute, which is dedicated to improving and saving the lives of patients. As cord blood became a viable option for patients who struggled to find a match, we opened our cord blood program in 2008 to help meet that unmet need, particularly to give patients from diverse backgrounds a better chance of survival. Actually, I'm really pleased to share with you that last month we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the first cord blood transplant facilitated by an Anthony Nolan cord blood unit. And I understand that the recipient is alive and well today, which made it for a really special moment. Okay, so we spoke about our cord blood program, who celebrated its 10-year anniversary last month. The next step of our evolution and our journey is increasingly becoming aware of how much support stem cell transplant patients need throughout their whole journey, not just at the point of their transplant. We recognize big gaps on the provision of care, support, and information available to patients and families, and decided to launch our patient services dedicated to improving the transplant journey. As the industry evolved once again, we needed to move along with the times. Thanks to our research corporate program and the contact with the stem cell transplant community, we noticed the increasing significance of new therapy developments. I knew that we could play an important role in supporting the next generation of treatments. That is why we launched the Cell and Gene Therapy Services in 2018 to continue to push for that innovation that we know will bring about life-saving treatments for patients. Next slide, please. Before we go any further, I thought it would be helpful to define what do we mean by cell and gene therapies. So cell and gene therapies involve extracting cells, protein, or genetic material, like DNA, from the patient, and in case of Anthony Nolan services, from healthy adult donors and cord blood units. Then scientists alter this material to provide a highly personalized therapy, which is reinjected into the patient. Cellular therapy uses actual cells as a therapy, whereas gene therapy alters the genetic material of a patient. Cell and gene therapies could offer long-lasting effects that are more far-reaching than traditional medicines. They have the potential to address cancer, yes, but also other complex diseases, such as motor neuron disease and many rare disorders for which there are no effective treatments today. Imagine not having to go through the burden of immunosuppression after a transplant, or not even needing a transplant in the first place to cure leukemia or after suffering something like a heart injury. Or imagine that a devastating disease like Parkinson's will be treated and cured with a single injection. That is the future that we're trying to bring about. Next slide, please. So now that we're on the same page about what cell and therapies mean and are, we can look at the wider landscape in which we're operating. Click, please. The global cell and gene therapy manufacturing services market is growing really rapidly. The expected growth is of 12.4% annual rate, and is expected to reach a value of $13.8 billion by 2026. To give you an idea, today, its expected value is of $7.7 billion. Just in the UK, there were 154 ongoing cell and gene therapy trials in 2020, which represented around 12% of the number of trials worldwide. Click, please. A reason for this growth is just how new it is. Discoveries are still being made every day, and the potential to have a major breakthrough is totally at the grasp of scientists' hands. The sector itself is still learning and understanding the range of applications and impact that these therapies could have. Click, please. Being so new also means that companies are still developing standard operating procedures. Nothing is written in stone or optimized when it comes to research, manufacturing, or even clinical implementation. Click, please. No standardized procedures means that there is a lot of trial and error going on. Everyone is trying to find a way to do things quicker and more efficiently, trying to find the best method to achieve the same and or better results. Click, please. The industry is simply driven by innovation, and the landscape is continuously changing. Click, please. The demand for services outstrips supply for research and manufacturing. There is a competition to find the most efficient processes, the most effective therapies, but also competition to acquire the best skills and talent. And importantly for us, a competition to find a reliable source of raw material, AKA cells, to feed into the research and development. Click, please. As we said, there we go. The potential for these therapies is huge. It is the difference between treating a disease with medication that will delay or ameliorate symptoms versus completely curing diseases. Click, please. I'm sure that you will agree with me that is all really, really exciting. And in a nutshell, we're helping accelerate treatments that could save and improve the lives of millions. Double click, please. I read an analogy in a paper once that I thought was a very fitting way to describe the cell and gene therapy landscape. And is that basically developers are building the plane at the same time as they're flying it. So if that is the case, today we're going to build the plane for Anthony Nolan and the cell and gene therapy services that we provide. Next slide. If we're going to be flying a plane while building it, I think that you'll agree that it's always a good idea to have a solid place to depart and or land if needed. So how does the cell and gene therapy runway looks for Anthony Nolan? Click, please. First, we have a research history. As we discussed earlier, we have a long history of innovation. Being pioneers on the stem cell transplant matching, which by the way, it was the first cell therapy developed ever, our research has never ceased to innovate to see how patient outcomes can be improved. Click, please. We are experts in allogenic transplants with more than 45 years of expertise in matching patients and donors. Whether a patient is receiving a donation from an Anthony Nolan, for someone on the Anthony Nolan register, Anthony Nolan still has a big role in coordinating the vast majority of transplants that happen in the UK every year. Click, please. We have an established stem cell register, as you well know, with more than 850,000 amazing donors ready to be called to help save a life, and a core blood bank with more than 10,000 clinical units. Click, please. We are certified by big names like the World Bone Marrow Donor Association, it's also a mouthful, the Human Tissue Authority, and something called FactNet Court, which my colleagues tell me that is an amazing seal of quality for our core blood bank. Beyond that, we have a very skilled staff with amazing expertise that ensures that all donations are done to the highest standards while safeguarding the well-being of our donors. This is a very important element for cell and gene therapies, and we'll talk about it later. Click, please. We have access to what I call the golden triad of clinicians, patients, and donors. As far as I know, that is a very unique position to be in, and it's something that certainly helps us to identify gaps, connect the dots, and advocate for change. Our patients and donors are very well informed about the process of donation and our research. We also seek feedback from our community to inform and guide our decision-making. Click, please. We have an established network of hospitals, NHS, universities, patient groups. That golden triad gives us access to this network from which we leverage support, drive improvements, and improvements to help standard practice and build partnerships. Click, please. Anthony Nolan is a leader in its field. No one can dispute that. For decades, we have brought different stakeholders together to advance science and improve patient outcomes. Click, please. We have proven that we can adapt and respond to unexpected situations to continue to save lives. The pandemic gave us plenty of examples in which we adapted our operations, introduced new ways of working, and responded to last-minute challenges. Blood cancer didn't stop because of the pandemic, and our life-saving efforts didn't either. So I hope that you'll agree that we have a pretty good runway. So now that we have done that, let's start building our plane. Next slide, please. So firstly, the parallels between a journey of a cell for transplant and for research and development are very clear. We can start on the left with the need of cells. In the case of a transplant, this is coming from a patient looking for a match. In the case of cell and gene therapies, this is coming from a client looking to develop a new therapy. For transplant, we will then match and select a donor from the Anthony Nolan register who will go on to donate. For cell and gene therapies, we will look for a suitable donor that meets the requirements of our clients, and this donor will proceed to donate in much the same way as they will do for transplant. Some of our clients are procuring cord blood. If that's the case, we will obtain consent from the mom to collect the cord blood and their baby once it's born. For both transplant and cell and gene therapies, we will then run a quality check on the cells. In the case of cell and gene therapies, we might also isolate or enrich and/or freeze the cells, depending on the requirements of our client. After the quality checks are done, the cells are delivered and they either go to save a patient's life or they go to enable life-saving research that could save millions. Next slide, please. So you will have noticed that the CGT journey started with our clients. So the next piece of our plane will give you more detail about who they are. The clients that we partner with range from academics at some of the UK's top universities to private, commercial, biotech, and pharmaceutical companies. The block that you see on the bottom left is a consortium, I can never say that word, consortium, that we're a part of, which was set up by Catapult, a government-funded organization that has brought together many cell therapy tech and therapy developers to improve the manufacturing process and try to bring cell therapies to patients faster and at a lower cost. Each client has unique requirements and is at a different stage of therapy development lifecycle. Some are conducting basic research and are very early in their development. Others are using our material to treat patients on clinical trials. The beauty of working with clients from an early stage is that we can scale with them, learning and evolving as their needs change. Many clients are conducting research in areas of hematological cancers and disorders. You might have heard of something called CAR-T therapies, which is one of the most established. Our clients are, not just yet. Thank you. Our clients are exploring if similar mechanisms could have an impact on solid tumors. Other early stage clients are looking at neuroscience and regenerative medicine in areas like wound healing. I'll give you more specific examples later in the presentation, but for now, I hope that you can see the vast potential for the use of our cells. Next slide. Thank you. The next step on the journey of a cell is actually finding a donor and arranging for the collection of material. We, of course, know that our amazing donors don't hesitate to help us save the lives of individual patients, but you might be thinking that donating for research is an entirely different matter. As I mentioned earlier, the well-being of our donors is paramount. It was very important for Anthony Nolan to seek their feedback on how they will feel about donating for research. That is why we asked them. We ran a survey to find out exactly that. 95.6% responded that they will be willing to donate their cells if they were modified so that they could better target a disease like leukemia before being given to a patient. 86.7% said yes to being willing to donate their cells for research and development to help develop new therapies that aim to save and improve lives. Next slide, please. So this is Phil. He donated his cells for research last year. Phil wanted to make a small contribution to research that overall will make a massive difference. When asked about his reasons for donating, he said that the COVID vaccine would never have happened without research, and he thought that if he did this, he could help people in the future. He knew that he was getting a bit older. He looks fairly young to me, but that's what he thought. So there was less of a chance for him to be called to donate for a patient, but was interested in the potential of research. Phil said that donating for research isn't as direct or measurable at the beginning, but it speeds up the whole process of learning and understanding. Next slide, please. So once amazing people like Phil donates their cells, we finally get to meet the different types of cells that are sought after by our clients. So let me introduce you to the hematopoietic stem cells. This job is full of mouthfuls. So HSCs are immature cells capable of growing into red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. They can be used therapeutically to treat a wide range of blood disorders and diseases. In fact, these are the cells that are used for stem cell transplants to cure blood cancer and disorders. Mesenchymal stem cells, or MSCs, are undifferentiated cells, which means that they can go on to become other types of cells when transplanted. They replace the bad cells for good cells. The coolest cells in town, natural killer cells, can recognize and kill bad pathogens when they enter the body. They can also recognize and destroy tumor cells. People who have deficient NK cells may be prone to more disease. So by transplanting healthy NK cells into their body, they can help replace the good and destroy the bad cells. Finally, T cells are the type of immune cell that helps the body fight infections and are found in the blood. They destroy abnormal cells such as viruses, bacteria, and parasites, and can be used to treat blood cancers in the same way. These cells provide the basis for that famous CAR T therapy that we mentioned earlier. The therapy works by making the T cells target tumor antigens in cancer cells. Next slide, please. A very important piece of our plain puzzle for cell and gene therapy is actually the regulation and ethics around our services. We need to remember that we're talking about procuring human material for research. If not handled well, there are multiple nightmare scenarios, not only when it comes for those cells being misused, but also for protecting the rights and well-being of the donors providing these cells. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we are licensed by the likes of the Human Tissue Authority and FACT Network. But more than that, we use our experience of working with stem cell donors to manage the end-to-end process of recruiting, consenting, and collecting cells from them. Our cell therapy center has something called research tissue bank status for both adult and core material. That means that, as you will expect from Anthony Nolan, all of our donors are fully informed on the purpose of their donation and the potential use of their cells. Every single project and client that we work with goes through a thorough assessment process through something called Independent Review Board, or IRB. Anthony Nolan's IRB is composed by donor representatives, clinicians, ethics experts, and Anthony Nolan staff. They assess the scientific merit and ethics of all requests for material to ensure that the burden we put on our donors is justified by the expected scientific benefits. Our IRB facilitates ethical research and development in a robust and transparent manner, safeguarding donor well-being to deliver the highest quality material. All requests are sourced ethically with informed consent and within regulations to safeguard the well-being of our donors and are delivered to the highest quality of standards to provide to our clients. Next slide, please. So we have built our plane. Hooray! What does it mean for our patients? Here are some examples of CET in the news. 3 of these headlines are just from this week. So it's a very timely presentation that we're having today. These include a new life for a sickle cell patient, better quality of life for heart attack victims, and an end to monthly transfusions for thalassemia patients. And this is from July last year, a therapy that was given to a baby aimed at prolonging the lives of children with spinal muscular atrophy. You can see that they're all from different indications, walks of lives, and ages. If we didn't know better, these headlines could almost sound extracted from a sci-fi novel, but no, this is our present, and there's even more to come. Whenever I see this news, I just feel really excited about everything that we're doing. Next slide, please. So what are our clients doing? Our first client example has developed a therapy to promote ocular healing. They are using amniotic membranes to create a clinical grade therapy to help treat patients with eye injuries, such as chronic ulcers, as well as other types of wounds. We're particularly proud of what we have achieved with this client because they first contacted us. They were looking for a sustainable source of amnion, that is short from amniotic membrane, from a nearby hospital. They were looking to scale their manufacturing, and our CTC colleagues work with them to develop a process to source the amnion for them. Today, they have seen an incredible growth, and the therapy has been used in over 5,000 treatments already. Next slide, please. Another of our clients is using cord blood units to isolate NK cells and optimize their function. They are developing an off-the-shelf product using gene editing techniques that could be used to treat a range of hematologic conditions and solid tumors. They have completed a phase 1 clinical study where patients that were given the treatment showed low-grade side effects. More importantly, they have observed that the NK cells went to the bone marrow and are providing immunity against the leukemia cells. Basically, the natural killer cells are honoring their name and are killing the cancer. Thanks to this, researchers have seen a reduction on the number of cancer cells remaining after treatment. Next slide, please. One of our academic clients is conducting research to cure immunodeficiencies. These are genetic defects on the immune system that makes patients vulnerable to infections. Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, the disease that Anthony Nolan had, is a good example. Our client is developing an autologous therapy. That means that they will use the patient's own cells to do the genetic modification before returning them to the patient's body. This therapy could become the preferred option to treat these patients instead of a stem cell transplant. They are using the cells donated by Anthony Nolan donors to validate their process. This helps ensure that when they get to the point of using the treatment on patients, their manufacturing process will be optimized and will increase the chances of success. I absolutely love this because it really feels like we have come full circle. If Anthony Nolan had been born today, he will very likely receive a gene therapy and will have a good chance of surviving. It's just amazing how much of an inspiration he continues to be. So that's all from me. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for listening. Apologies for the hiccup at the beginning. I don't know what happened with my my internet. Before we go into questions, I did want to show you a short reel made by one of our researchers at the short but sweet. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I've got one question, Zella Jones here.
Hi.
With two parts. It's about the regulations and ethics. I'm sort of just wondering, because I do quite a few presentations, et cetera, to students.
Yep.
Do we have to bring into our presentations the fact that this is going to be happening, whether their donations will be used possibly for research, or is it something that if they become a potential donor, they will be queried at that point? Should it be mentioned beforehand?
I believe at the point of recruitment, I know that you have limited time to engage and explain what is a stem cell transplant, it's just too much information. Right. So I think that at this point, keeping it simple is best. Right. And you're right, if they were ever to be called to donate for research, we have a whole process to get in touch with those potential donors, explain what they will be getting involved with, make sure that they're fully informed, and they will be taken on a different journey. But it feels that, just to make sure that you can recruit as many people as possible, keeping it simple, it's probably a good course of action. I think Alice wants to say something.
Yeah, so just two things. So on the consent form, it mentions around consenting around research. However, when we think about who we're registering and who Anaily has talked about is actually more likely to donate for research, it's not actually the age group that we're looking at recruiting in schools, because we know that those younger donors are more likely to go on to donate to a patient that needs a stem cell transplant. Whereas the cell and gene therapy, as I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, Anaily, is can utilise those donors that are more unlikely to go on to donate to a patient because of their age. So when we're talking about young people, I think Anaily is bang on. We still keep it simple. We are not going to change anything that we're talking to our young people about, because if it did come to several years' time and they were actually asked if they were happy to donate for research, one, it's likely the conversation we would have with them at that time would be different to what we were talking about them when we're signing them up to register, and there would be a full consent process if they were asked to donate via research. So we don't change anything that we're saying. I know something that I talk about in my presentations, and I don't talk about it explicitly, or it's actually more when I talk to non-hero project groups of people that are interested in signing up. It's talking about how amazing Anthony Nolan are as a charity. We're the register, but we're not just the charity. We do all this amazing research that can save people's lives, but I don't go into any of the detail that Anaily's gone here, because I don't know about you, but I sat there going, oh wow, this is going to take me some time to process this. So I don't actually feel that I would be able to put it concisely to anybody else, and particularly when we're talking to those young people, sort of 16 to 18-year-olds, it's not something that's really applicable to them at the moment.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
short answer. But of course, if anything does change, we're always on top of what's happening across the organisation, and Katie with the lead being the Hero Project and making sure that all of our presentations are up to date and giving everybody that we're educating the right information. So if there was a time that it would be included, please rest assured that we would do that and we would communicate with you well in advance. Anything else from anybody? It's a good question, Zella. There's one that I
One that's, are there more cord hospitals becoming on board? Because as far as I'm aware, there aren't that many that are actually used. An awful lot of cords are just thrown away.
So we have 5 cord blood collection centers across the UK. It is true that a good proportion is just doesn't have the volume that is needed to be viable for clinical application, like to go into a patient. So when we say that we have a 10,000 cord blood bank units of clinical grade, is those that are like ready for transplant. With the cell and gene therapies, actually, we do use a lot of those that don't make it into the clinical status, either to clients that receive the fresh product straight from the moms, and also to do a lot of process validation ourselves. So actually the service is helping us make a better use of that material and those resources.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Doing my best.
Just as a matter of interest,
Yeah.
I had a cord stem cell transplant in 2014, and my cords actually came from Spain. So they weren't from the UK. Quite a few friends said they'd like to donate to try and help, but they couldn't donate at the hospitals in the UK at that time. So I was exceedingly lucky in that they came from two sources in Spain.
Yeah, that happens a lot because the cord blood units, even the ones that have the volume necessary for clinical application, are still really small for an adult. So it's really common to have 2 units going into an adult. But actually, I heard that from the 2 units, one is the one that actually, like, one sort of lays dormant or disappears, and the other one is that takes over.
You're absolutely right.
Fascinating.
Because I had 2 from Spain, one from Valencia and one from Barcelona. And interestingly enough, as the days went on, they could see the one from Barcelona taking over and actually working, and the other one, as you say, just remained dormant. So absolutely amazing.
I know. Yeah. So nice to see you. I'm so glad to so pleased to
Isn't it
hear
very
that.
nice to see you as well.
Any other questions, comments? Can everybody knows what natural killer cells and T cells and
Absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much for that. Really interesting.
Thank you for the